You know, one of the hardest truths to accept in love is this. Sometimes the person you want the most can only realize your value once you're gone. When you love someone with an avoidant attachment style, someone who pulls away when things get close, someone who shuts down when emotions rise, you often end up feeling like you're walking on eggshells. You chase connection. They retreat, you reach out, they disappear, and every time you try to bridge the gap, you lose a little bit more of yourself. But here's the twist. Leaving isn't punishment. It's love, not love for them, but love for you. Because the truth is, an avoidant partner doesn't need you to prove your love harder. They need to feel what life is like without it. They can't heal in the comfort of being endlessly forgiven. They can only grow in the discomfort of your absence. See, when you keep showing up for someone who keeps running, you're not showing loyalty. You're teaching them that their distance has no consequences. And that means they never have to look in the mirror and face the pain they cause. But when you walk away with peace, not anger, when you say, I love you, but I love myself more, that silence becomes a teacher. Your absence becomes the mirror they've been avoiding, because an avoidant doesn't change when you stay and explain. They change when you leave and mean it. They need that space to realize what connection truly meant. They need to feel the loss of the one person who made them feel safe enough to love. And maybe, just maybe, that's when they'll face what they've been running from all along, their own fear of intimacy, their own wounds, their own heart. So don't chase the one who avoids love. Let them chase what they lost when you finally stopped. Sometimes walking away isn't the end of the story. It's the moment the other person begins to understand what love really was. Because when you leave with grace, you don't just set yourself free, you give them the chance to meet themselves. And that's the most powerful love lesson you can ever teach. Leaving isn't rejection, it's redirection towards self-respect. When someone you love starts to withdraw, when they stop communicating, when their silence becomes the loudest sound in the room, it's easy to take it personally. You start to wonder what you did wrong, what you could have said differently, or how you might fix it. You think that if you just love them harder, they'll finally feel safe enough to stay, but that's the trap. Because love, no matter how deep or patient, can't fix someone who's committed to avoiding connection. And when you keep trying to prove your worth to someone who's already emotionally checked out, you slowly start abandoning yourself in the process. The moment you decide to walk away isn't an act of rejection, it's an act of remembrance. Remembering that your value doesn't depend on someone's capacity to see it. It's remembering that your love, your presence, your energy are precious things. You're not rejecting them. You're choosing to stop pouring into a cup with a hole in the bottom. You're choosing to stop trying to earn a love that should have been freely given. When you leave, you're not saying you're not enough. You're saying, I deserve a space where I don't have to beg to be seen. And that's the essence of self-respect. It's the quiet, grounded confidence of knowing that walking away doesn't make you heartless, it makes you honest. It's admitting that love without reciprocity becomes self-betrayal. Because every time you chase someone who runs, you teach yourself that your needs can wait, that your feelings don't matter as much as keeping them close. And that's how you start shrinking to fit into someone else's comfort zone. But when you choose to leave, something powerful happens. You shift the story. You stop being the person who's trying to hold it all together and become the person who chooses peace over pain. You stop reacting to their distance and start responding to your own worth. That's when your energy changes, when you stop chasing validation and start embodying it. And believe me, that shift doesn't go unnoticed. An avoidant partner might not say it out loud, but your decision to walk away sends a message that hits deeper than any conversation ever could. Because it shows them that your love has standards, that your heart has boundaries, and that even though you cared deeply, you cared for yourself just a little bit more. That's not rejection, that's maturity, that's emotional clarity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stop showing up where your presence is being taken for granted. When you step away, you're not closing the door on love. You're opening the door to respect for your time, your emotions, your future. Because the truth is, when someone avoids intimacy, the more you chase, the further they run. But when you stand still, when you choose yourself, they're forced to feel the weight of your absence. Walking away isn't about ending something. It's about beginning again with yourself. It's about remembering that real love doesn't demand that you shrink. It invites you to expand. And sometimes that expansion starts the moment you stop trying to make someone stay. An avoidant partner can't grow in comfort. They grow in consequence. When someone constantly pulls away from emotional closeness, they're not doing it because they don't feel something. They're doing it because feeling something scares them. Intimacy exposes their deepest fears. Fear of rejection, fear of losing control, fear of being truly seen. So they build walls, they disguise distance as independence, they call detachment peace. And as long as you stay there, patiently waiting outside those walls, they never have a reason to take them down. Comfort is their shield. It allows them to believe that they can keep avoiding without losing anything that matters. If every time they retreat, you chase after them, you're confirming their belief that love is safe only when they control the distance. They get to disappear and still be loved. They get to disconnect and still be chosen. And that means there's no consequence, no reason to reflect, no urgency to grow. Growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. It happens in discomfort, in loss, in silence. It happens when something shifts, when the safety net is gone and they're finally left alone with themselves. That's why your absence becomes the most powerful teacher they'll ever meet. When you walk away, you introduce consequence into a dynamic that's been running on repetition. You show them, maybe for the first time, that love is not a guarantee, that they can't keep pushing away without eventually losing what they value. You make them face the emotional reality they've been avoiding. That distance doesn't protect them, it isolates them. And when that realization hits, it cracks something open. It's in that space of discomfort that growth begins. They start to feel the silence, the emptiness that used to feel safe but now feels hollow. They notice what's missing, your warmth, your effort, your consistency. And that's when awareness creeps in. They begin to see that intimacy wasn't the threat they imagined. It was the connection they needed all along. But they can only come to that truth when they no longer have the comfort of your constant presence. For you, this moment of consequence isn't about punishment. It's about balance. You're not leaving to make them suffer. You're leaving to allow them to see what their patterns have cost them. You're choosing to stop carrying both sides of the relationship. And in doing so, you hand the responsibility back to them. Whether they grow or stay the same, that's their choice. But what matters most is that you stopped protecting them from the discomfort that could finally make them change. Growth for anyone, avoidant or not, requires friction. It requires a moment of loss, a confrontation with reality. Avoidant partners don't grow while being endlessly accommodated. They grow when they realize that their behavior has real consequences. It's in the silence after you leave that they finally hear themselves. It's in the stillness of your absence that they meet the truth they've been running from. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding them closer. It's stepping back and letting consequence do what comfort never could. Explaining and proving love won't heal avoidance. Distance and silence might. When you're with someone who constantly withdraws emotionally, your natural instinct is to close the gap. You think that if you can just explain your feelings the right way, if you can just show them enough patience, kindness and understanding, they'll finally feel safe enough to open up. You start overgiving, over-explaining and over-functioning for the relationship, believing that your consistency will eventually soften their defenses. But what you don't realize is that every time you try to prove your love, you reinforce their avoidance. You teach them that you'll always be the one to fix the emotional distance they create. Avoidant partners often associate closeness with danger. The more they feel your emotional intensity, the more threatened they feel, not by you, but by what connection represents: vulnerability, exposure, the possibility of being hurt. So when you respond to their withdrawal with more words, more emotion, more proving, they don't feel reassured. They feel overwhelmed. It confirms their fear that intimacy is suffocating, that love will swallow them whole. And instead of moving closer, they retreat further, leaving you trapped in a cycle of trying harder while they pull away. This is why distance can sometimes do what dialogue can't. Silence can speak louder than reassurance. When you stop explaining, you shift the energy of the dynamic completely. You move from pursuit to presence, from trying to convince them of your worth to standing firm in it. Your stillness becomes unsettling in the best way, because it breaks the pattern they've come to depend on. Suddenly, the space they once craved doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like loss. And it's in that absence that they start to feel what your presence truly meant. Healing avoidance isn't about proving love, it's about creating enough space for awareness. When you stop chasing, you give them the chance to confront their own discomfort. They begin to feel the loneliness their avoidance creates. They start to notice that safety doesn't come from isolation, but from genuine connection. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting the consequences of their behavior more clearly than any conversation ever could. It's not that you stop caring, it's that you start caring differently. Instead of trying to rescue them from their fear, you allow them to face it. Instead of trying to earn their trust through endless reassurance, you show them that love doesn't mean abandoning yourself to prove a point. You let your actions speak, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Distance is powerful because it restores balance. It reminds both people that love requires reciprocity, not rescue. When you stop proving, you reclaim your dignity. When you stop explaining, you create room for understanding. Not the kind you force, but the kind that grows naturally in silence. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do for someone afraid of love is to let them feel what it's like when love finally stops knocking on their door, because only then can they decide to open it for themselves. Your peace is the most powerful response when someone constantly pulls away, ignores your emotional needs, or treats your love like it's negotiable. Your first instinct might be to fight for clarity. You want to talk, to fix, to make them understand how their actions hurt you. But when you do, you often end up arguing with a wall. You explain your feelings to someone who isn't ready to hear them. You cry in front of someone who's too shut down to comfort you, and after every conversation, you're left more drained, more unseen, and more confused. That's when you realize peace isn't found in trying to be understood. Peace is found in deciding that you no longer need to explain yourself to be respected. When you choose peace, you're not giving up. You're stepping out. You're removing yourself from the emotional chaos that keeps you tied to someone's avoidance. You stop trying to manage their reactions and start managing your boundaries. Instead of meeting their silence with pleading, you meet it with calm. Instead of chasing answers, you choose presence. Peace isn't passive. It's power disguised as stillness. It's the quiet strength of saying, I don't need to fight for someone to see my worth. For an avoidant partner, your peace is disarming. They're used to being met with pressure, questions, tears, attempts to close the emotional distance. They expect you to react because reaction keeps the cycle alive. But when you stop reacting, you shift the entire dynamic. Your calm confuses their defense system. It creates a silence they can't control. They begin to feel the stability you've chosen for yourself and the absence of the emotional chase they've grown accustomed to. Peace also changes you. It frees you from the exhaustion of trying to fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. It allows you to redirect your energy inward, to rebuild the parts of you that were neglected while you were busy holding everything together. You start realizing that not every battle deserves your presence. Not every silence deserves a response. Sometimes the most mature thing you can do is to say nothing and let time reveal what words never could. The moment you choose peace, you take back your power. You stop letting their emotional instability dictate your own. You stop riding the roller coaster of their moods and step onto solid ground. That's when healing begins. Not because they've changed, but because you have. Because your peace becomes the statement that no longer needs words. It says, I'm done performing for love. I'm done trying to earn what should be mutual. In the end, peace is not indifference. It's self-respect in motion. It's knowing that calm doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself enough to stop participating in dysfunction. It's realizing that silence isn't weakness. It's a boundary that speaks louder than any argument ever could. And when you live from that place, your peace becomes undeniable, unshakable, and deeply magnetic. The kind of energy that no longer chases but attracts what's aligned. Love them enough to let them face themselves. There comes a point in every relationship where you realize that love alone isn't enough to save someone from their own patterns. You can hold them, support them, reassure them, and still watch them pull away. You can give everything, patience, compassion, understanding, and still feel like you're talking to someone who's hiding behind walls you can't climb. That's when love takes on a different form. It's no longer about giving more. It's about stepping back and letting them stand in front of the mirror they've been avoiding. The one that reflects who they've become through the way they love, or rather the way they avoid love. When someone is stuck in avoidance, they're not just avoiding you, they're avoiding themselves. Their wounds, their fears, their insecurities, they build emotional armor and convince themselves that they're protecting their peace when, in reality, they're protecting their pain. And the more you try to fix them, the more you unintentionally feed that illusion. Because if you keep showing up to bridge every gap they create, you give them permission to never face what they're running from. You take away the very discomfort that could wake them up. Letting them face themselves means having the courage to stop cushioning their behavior with your forgiveness. It means no longer excusing the distance or rationalizing their withdrawal as something you need to be patient with. It means stepping aside and allowing life, not your love, to teach them what your words never could. When you walk away, you're not punishing them. You're giving them the one thing that comfort and reassurance never could, the opportunity to see themselves clearly. Sometimes people only grow through absence. It's in the silence that they finally hear their own thoughts. It's in the loneliness that they feel the weight of what they pushed away. And in that moment of realization, something powerful happens. They meet the version of themselves they've been hiding from. They feel the consequence of their emotional distance. And that's when growth begins. But they can only reach that point if you step out of the way. Loving someone enough to let them face themselves also means trusting that their journey isn't your responsibility. You can't heal their past. You can't reparent their wounds. You can't teach them to receive love if they're still terrified of it. What you can do is lead by example, by showing what it looks like to honor your own boundaries, to love without losing yourself, to walk away without bitterness. That's the kind of love that transforms even in absence. It takes strength to let go of someone you still love, especially when you can see their potential. But potential isn't partnership. Healing doesn't happen in theory. It happens in experience. They need to experience what it feels like when the person who once filled their silence with understanding no longer fills it at all. That emptiness becomes their greatest teacher. And though you might never see it, that's where their growth begins, in the moment you love them enough to let them stand alone. In the end, walking away from an avoidant partner isn't about giving up on love. It's about choosing the kind of love that chooses you back. It's about understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is to stop rescuing them and start respecting yourself. When you leave with grace, you don't just set yourself free, you create the space for both of you to grow into better, braver versions of who you were meant to be. Thank you for listening. And remember, love doesn't always mean holding on. Sometimes it means having the strength to let go.